had been harassed for like their entire lives, some of them involved in like sex trafficking and stuff and basically having handlers, but a lot of them not being to their knowledge, but more like hearing voices in their head. Or one person I talked to literally went full catatonic. It was like they had told him, it was an online harasser had told this person that they were capable of this stuff, and basically said, here, I'll show you, and made him completely catatonic. And so I was like, so were you aware of like what was going on? And he said, yeah, completely. His mind was fully there. He knew what was going on when they were pinching him at a lot of points, because that's apparently like one of the tests that they do when people are catatonic or whatever. But he could feel the pain of it, but he just was not able to move. And that was basically their way of saying, like, we can do this to you.
That's like sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
That technology is, or the effect of that technology is the same as what people say they feel when they come face to face with, say, a gray alien. They get a sense of sleep paralysis, that they're so shocked. Maybe it's not ontological shock that these aliens are using because they're vibrating so high, but rather they're using some kind of a psionic ability to trap you into this like a sleep paralysis type state. And isn't it odd that the technology our government has is starting to overlap and maybe even become indistinguishable from anomalous phenomenon effects? And is that an accident?
No, actually.
I'm an alien. My rocket ship is human bone and skin. I try to figure out what it means to be human. It's pretending to know what's going on. What's going on? What the fuck is going on? And to help me figure out what the fuck is going on is attorney Paige Fox. She's also an educator, a UFO whistleblower, disclosure advocate, researcher, consciousness warrior, and sometimes circus trapeze performer, swinging and flipping through the many legal and ethical hurdles of life, often without a net. One of the few legal colleagues who has chosen to use her understanding of human law and American litigating mindset to break down these truly anomalous and phenomenal times.
Paige Fox, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much. You and I have known each other for a minute now. I think we go back to the Surviving the Survivor podcast, where we were confronted with Michael Shermer, this grifting debunker who's trying to still out there convince people that Lee Harvey Oswald was a lone gunman, and really playing into the whole system of you just everybody calm down, and the government's doing all the right things, and they'd be way too incompetent to pull off some kind of a conspiracy. And it was an interesting conversation, but today I wanted to go through this interesting episode that I came up with for us about how the basis of all science and law and information with regard to our government has been based on not only aspects of mind control, but occult symbolism that starts all the way back in the turn of the century. It really still goes on to this day by the powers that be in situations like Super Bowl halftime shows, opening ceremonies of Olympics.
You need to tell me about the links you sent.
So anyway, I just want to, get the ball rolling there. We also have things going on in the news, and we could go. I think that's what I want to talk to you about first. Is stuff going on in the news today. Now, recently.
Full disclosure, going back to your intro, I do not do trapeze without a net. That's insane.
Without a net, yeah.
No. Without safety lines, yes. Without a net, no. Well, and then going back to your point on when we met, do you realize that that's like over a year ago now?
Has it been?
Like, doesn't that it was June of 2023, I think. Yeah, because I didn't even like start looking into any of this until October 2022, and then we met
Yeah.
on that podcast with Michael Shermer or whatever. That I don't know anything about what he's doing right now, but yeah, that's so long ago already.
I know time goes by really quick. It's funny. Michael Shermer. I had some one-on-one conversations with him after, because after that show, he almost quit the episode halfway through because I was
Didn't
laying
he?
it on him so hard. Yeah, he was like, thought he felt like I was bullying him when clearly, because we all had a chance to introduce ourselves, and I introduced myself as somebody who kind of fell into the UFO phenomenon by way of researching the John F. Kennedy assassination. And he wrote like 2 pages in his one book about the Kennedy assassination, and tried to put himself out as as an expert on the subject. And we kind of slammed him pretty hard.
What, only 2 pages?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember that whole thing coming up, and I was so like in shock about the fact that he was saying the shit that he was saying. I just I don't know. I didn't realize that he had only like mentioned 2 pages or whatever.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, and he tweeted out about me and all this stuff. And as it turns out, he's like most other debunkers and kind of institutional cynics, in that they pretend to know what they're talking about. They don't deep dive on any one subject. They kind of dabble and kind of pick the low hanging fruit. And I don't understand the point of those folks, other than that they're trying to give people comfort that the world is simple and obvious, and there's nothing magical or mysterious or anomalous or phenomenal going on. Just, wake up and go to your 9 to 5 job and come home and order pizza and watch your favorite sports team, because that's freedom. That's America. And you shouldn't be worried about all this other stuff, right?
so you mean you think that he's working for our government?
Yeah, I do. And he is the kind of people that are on the payroll of the CIA to put out disinformation. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know for sure, but I don't mean that in like a mean or, her like I don't know. I don't want to pick on him, but I've run into quite a few people like that, and whether or not, I don't think they intentionally mean harm. I think that they are technically doing their job, whether it's for national security or whatever reason,
Right.
So whatever, but yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
they all
do.
seem to have similar mindsets and tactics that are used.
Yeah, I don't mind calling him out as a CIA shill or a stooge, uh, because I've done that before on Twitter. I've done the same thing with Mick West on Twitter. And
Yeah.
the thing about it, if somebody called me a CIA stooge, I'd probably sue, because clearly there's no evidence that I'm touting the company line of the CIA. And so for me to, and that's the slander law, right? So let's say, for example, I'll give you a great example. This kind of ties into what's going on in the world today. If, say, Kendrick Lamar, the rapper, was to write a song about Drake, calling him a pedophile, wouldn't you say that falls under slander libel if there's no evidence to suggest that Drake is a pedophile?
Um, I mean, don't they do that shit all the time, first of all? And there's lots of exceptions to that stuff, like
To the
in
slander rule?
in certain areas, entertainment being one of them.
Oh, is it? Okay.
But it's the idea of doing something like, like suing somebody for slander or libel or anything like that is not as clear cut
Okay.
as people would like. But I mean, I see what you're saying.
Well, like Donald Trump, for example.
Not worth your time to try to do it, though.
Right. Like Donald Trump sued somebody for saying he wasn't a billionaire, right? Because that hurt his brand. And if, for example, I would think that Drake's brand would be hurt. He's a $1 billion musician. That's big money that he's making over there. Same with Diddy, same with Jay-Z, and these people have been openly accused by the media, by implication, by relationship, by celebrities, by conspiracy theorists, as being part of an underground, maybe not so underground, but a Hollywood elite pedophile ring. Clearly, there's some fire where there's smoke, because we've seen what's going on with Jeffrey Epstein. We saw what's going on with Diddy. You figure like Diddy is just like the music industry version of Jeffrey Epstein, just getting people compromised.
Absolutely.
To
Yeah. I mean, blackmail is rampant in this country everywhere.
yeah,
So, like, yeah, it's gross. I mean, and it runs very deep. And I feel like all of that shit on very underlying level is really all connected to the same stuff that we know is going on, which weirdly enough, like pedophile rings connecting to MK Ultra, connecting to UFO technology, connecting to the Department of Defense and fucking NASA,
right.
and like Disney World and shit like that. So it's
Well, you're hitting
crazy.
on all the talking points of the memo that I sent earlier, because it's all connected
Oh, absolutely.
in a weird way. Can we get into some of the material that I
Yeah,
did?
yeah, for sure.
Let me
For
present
sure.
it to you, and we'll stop as we go and just
Sure.
kind of talk about it. So, when I was doing some research on the founding of NASA, there's a particular group of characters that you would not expect to be part of the foundation of NASA. First up is a guy by the name of Aleister Crowley. Okay, Aleister Crowley was known as the most wicked man in the world, right around the early 1900s, 1910 through 1930. He was on the cover of a famous magazine, because he engaged in black magic and sex rituals that he felt um, uh, uh, put him in touch with a higher power. And let me read a quote by Aleister Crowley, which I find very telling as to his character. The devil is historically the god of any people one person dislikes. This has led to so much confusion of thought that the beast, 666, has preferred to let his names stand as they are and to proclaim that simply that Iwas, the solar phallic hermetic Lucifer, is his own guardian angel. And think about the language with the everybody using there. He's calling the B666 in the plural pronoun of they.
Hmm.
It also says he calls in the AWAS, which I looked up a photograph of, and we'll show it here on the show,
Okay.
uh, as the solar phallic hermetic Lucifer, and that Lucifer is his own guardian angel. That is the kind of guy that teamed up with Jack Parsons, a a rocketeer who failed out of MIT, who started the Pasadena Jet Propulsion Laboratory in the early 1920s. Um, uh, Combined with L. Ron Hubbard, who comes right out of World War II or World War One in Navy intelligence, to involve these guys deeper into this Aleister Crowley cult called the Theamites, where they came up with this wonderful phrase, "Do what thou will," and they all kind of do this sex magic and worshiping of Baphomet, including child sex magic, where they uh, end up having group sex, with the 16-year-old daughter, Sarah Northrop, from the famous Northrop Grumman agency, who's involved in aerospace. So, as you can see, these people are combined in the origin all the way through in its practice and rituals of what they do, and even connected to powerful organizations still cornering the market on aerospace technology today. So these brought
Hmm.
by NASA. Oh, did I forget Werner von Braun, a Nazi scientist, famous for bringing to the world the V2 rocket, and brought over an Operation Paperclip. So all of this occult symbolism, black magic, and these crazy, brilliant scientists, religious people, seemingly team up with a Nazi who, is working heavily in propaganda with um, Walt Disney and other major motion picture films to perpetrate on some grand scale some great kabuki.
Yeah. I mean, I have absolutely heard all of that, and it's it's so easy to dismiss as insane, you know? Like, I mean, had I heard anything like that, and even still today, when you hear like when I hear about the different theories and stuff about how all of this is connected to the Bible and, devil worship and everything else, that I've steered clear of that narrative, mostly just because it scares me, and so I kind of avoid it. But stuff like that pops up all the time. I mean, like Aleister Crowley was clearly a very powerful person who essentially like knew what magic is and how, to take advantage of it. But there's like people across history who have done that for hundreds of thousands of years. I mean, you look back in like the biblical times too, and you look at all like the, like they basically give up or somebody, or like why can't I think of the word?
Sacrifice.
Sacrifice, yes, thank you. Sacrifice somebody, and that's like been going on for years. And I feel like Aleister Crowley is literally another example of that. He's somebody who discovered magic, who discovered that, I mean, all of us are essentially capable of magic, but then he decided that him and his wishes for power and, control were more important than the other human lives that he was sacrificing. Like it's sickening. And I feel like that's so common in human nature in general. Like you see that across history. Again, you see that with all of the stuff in the government right now, with all of these people who are high ranking officers, who are doing what they're doing for the betterment of the country and for national security purposes. But when you boil it down to it, what they're doing is hurting individual humans, because they are basically telling themselves this cause is more important than the individual humans that I'm sacrificing. And then for whatever reason, and I don't know enough about it, but I do know when I learned about Aleister Crowley, at one point, there's stuff in black magic, and you may know more about this, but like there are reasons that young blood is like looked for and stuff like that, And so that I feel like the pedophilia thing, especially with how it's connected to what's going on in the entertainment industry and what went on in the Epstein stuff and what is still rampant and crazily denied by an entire party, but that's a whole other story. But like, I think that it all boils down to the same thing. A lot of it is being used for profit also, but in like the sense of the black magic stuff, it's the same idea as like the sacrificial lamb shit. And I don't know, like you see it everywhere. It's entertainment.
Well, I mean, it permeates everything. Matter of fact, I was just listening to Theo Vaughn today, and he had on a guest on his episode 559, a woman by the name of Layla Micklethwaite, who basically brought to the forefront a research paper that all started with a hashtag during COVID, during the great lockdown and taking away of rights of American people, the greatest transfer of wealth in the history of modern society, essentially, where people were told to stay home, not work, not go to church, not see their family, not see their parents. People died, people lost their jobs, people lost their companies, their private businesses, and were forced into this ultimate mass ritual of counting the dead on the TV. And it was this real bizarre, dark time, I think, in America's country. There were so many companies that just went under because they weren't deemed necessary. However, Amazon and Target and those companies were necessary, but your mom and pop business was not necessary. And look at it now, it's 2025. And I feel like we're on this fake economy where we have this fake money. We have institutions just giving you crappy services, and they're just getting
nothing you can do about it.
Nothing we can do about it. We're in a technocratic oligarchy, unfortunately, at this point in time. And it's people like you and I who have small businesses and legal practice, mom and pop shops that are still providing. these small convenience stores that are still owned by little small families. What else is left? The small companies really can't compete out there, and I blame that on COVID. And then before that was the great stock, house devaluing bubble of 2008, which killed a lot of businesses. And we're bringing this up from businesses. It's about control, right?
Yeah,
How do you
absolutely.
control the people? You control their money, you control their health, and most importantly, what we're talking about today is you control their education and then their entertainment.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Got it, right?
Like, I just need to pause you and remind you, by the way, because again, my whole take on COVID particularly, do you
Yeah.
remember like what I told
No,
you about it initially?
no.
I
That's
was
my recollection.
vaccinated. I was vaccinated twice and boosted twice.
Okay. I'm sorry.
So no, yeah, me too. But like I was on the other side of that argument. And
Yeah.
like I mean, living in Chicago
Yeah.
for the last however many years, which is, like notoriously and proudly a
Yeah.
blue state.
Sure.
Um, During all of that time, I was like, the media is so different on the other side. And so the media that I was being blasted without even realizing it, because I was literally accusing other people of listening to biased shit. Whereas when I was doing the same thing. But they're so fucking good at what they do with that media, and it's so deep. Again, it's so deep, and there's so many people involved with it that aren't bad people. They're just unintentionally playing into this system. And I was a part of that, like I spent all of my volunteer efforts, my pro bono efforts, doing like voting rights for certain things, promoting the COVID vaccine, like shitting on my friends that didn't get the vaccine. And
Shaming them.
yeah, without even realizing I was like gaslighting them though. But and the only reason I feel like I was able to, and the vaccine shit was one of the absolute last topics that I looked into when I started being like, holy shit, aliens are real, UFOs. Oh my God, the government's fucking lying about everything. Like, oh, I can't look at the vaccine stuff yet. I'm not ready for that. But when I started to, I found exactly what I thought I would, in that it's all the same goddamn companies who are ruining everything else.
Yeah.
It's all the same people who have had all of that control. And it's just crazy to me, like how much I was in it, and I didn't realize I was in it until I took a step back. But the only reason I was able to was because I had friends from Southern Illinois who were like all Republican, all big Trump supporters, who I kept in my mind, like, everybody wants to write them off as bad people who don't care about individual rights. And it's like, that's not what it is, because they're good people, so like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, I think people are good at the personal level, but when people start identifying as part of like a tribe, right? Part of the blue tribe or the red tribe, that's where I feel you can get misguided. And I feel like now people like you and me who have listen, I didn't vote this past election.
I voted for RFK. I was not
Yeah,
going to vote for anybody else.
I was gonna vote, but then I ended up going to Japan and Australia for work, and but I think ultimately I wasn't gonna be able to pull the trigger on the vote because and I like RFK too, but at the same time I'm glad I didn't vote because I think I've become. I always thought I was a one issue voter, and that was to get truth and transparency on the assassination file out of the United States government.
And that's it.
That was it. That was my whole reason for voting. That was all why I wanted RFK Jr. was because I thought we could finally figure out that the CIA really was the power behind the assassination, not only of John F. Kennedy, but Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, um,
Marilyn Monroe.
Marilyn Monroe, John Lennon, Bob Marley, the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan, and even the most recent attempted assassination twice of the now sitting president Donald Trump. And I don't believe that because I think Trump's a good guy. I don't think he's a good guy. I think he has a populism about him. But I would have voted for him, I think, if he would have came out as an anti-Zionist. Uh,
Yeah.
but now I was that, and then I was like, okay, it's stupid to just base all my voting on whether or not somebody releases the assassination file. But I think now I'm like, well, I can't vote for anybody who's a Zionist because if you're a Zionist, that means that you are willing to murder people because you want to support Israel. And Israel's this tiny little country, a couple million people, and they seem to control the United States of America. And every one of our Congress people, our senators, every president, including Trump, and even RFK Jr., would support giving unlimited funds and weapons to Israel to commit the final act of genocide against the Palestinian people, to push the borders of Israel out to make a greater Israeli region, which ultimately one day could be the capital of the one world government. And, you know, and maybe it does all go back to John F. Kennedy, because John F. Kennedy said in his final speech, the one that probably got him killed, that there's a vast, wide reaching conspiracy of a group of people who are so well funded, so infected into every aspect of society, military, entertainment, religion, everything. And I was thinking, well, was he thinking? Was he talking about Zionism? Was he talking about that kind of thing? And this was the case. Listen, this show's not supposed to be about Zionism or anti-Zionism.
No, yeah,
There's good
but it's
people
all
out there.
connected. I mean,
There's
that
good
shit
people
is
out there that are that
absolutely,
love
absolutely.
their Jewish brothers and sisters. I love my Jewish brothers and sisters,
Ditto,
uh,
ditto.
but I
Yeah,
don't. What I don't love is the Israeli government, and I don't love anybody who just tries to shut down dissent and call you an anti-Semite because because you don't believe in a government's right to have this kind of power, right? And that's
right.
my opinion, you know.
I mean, we have very similar, if not exactly the same views on that. I mean, that was the biggest bummer for me and with RFK. And it was my one hope that I had for like when Trump went in office, like, okay, he's
Yeah,
not pro-war and all that stuff.
right.
But I don't know. I feel like first of all, it's fucked up to think that it's okay to take any other individual's life. I mean, it's just not,
Well, but
whether
the
like if
Bible
you're
said they could have it, though, Paige.
yeah, okay. Well, who wrote the
I'm just
Bible?
saying, but
And
that's their
there's
argument.
yeah,
You know, that's
I
the
know.
argument.
I've had
Yeah,
that argument with a friend before.
yeah,
And I don't mean to like, put down anyone's feelings because those are like their true feelings
right,
on the whole subject. And I can't imagine, being Jewish and having to go through this stuff.
right,
The disconnect, I feel like, and this is what's so hard to explain to people, at least in my opinion, the disconnect is that like none of us are actually feeling what's being portrayed on the media.
right.
The shit that's being portrayed on the media is making everything so simplistic. Like, oh, you didn't vote for Biden, that means you don't support LGBTQIA rights. Like that's not connected because I didn't vote for Biden because he did genocide and he's just
Right, yeah,
killing
genocide
people
Joe.
that don't deserve to die. And
Right,
it's for the benefit of fucking money, profit.
right.
All it is profit.
Yeah, and
And
control. I
that's
think you're right. Can profit from the corporations because that's all they care about. But it comes down to class warfare, in my opinion, in that the government, I think the blue and the red team are kind of the same. In that the red team, they're like, okay, super nationalism and let's go money, rah rah rah, and let's not worry about the social stuff. Where the Democrats are like, don't worry about it. They still have all the money and all the power, but they're like, yeah, but what about abortion and trans and gay and this and that, right? And they try to wedge when really the big issue is class warfare and these little issues like sex, gender, reproductive rights. Not that that's a little issue, but intelligent people can honestly have disagreements about it. I think what the real issue is class warfare. And they're trying to stave off the moment in time where the gray zone, the gray tribe, which is where I feel like you and I are. I'm not on red team. I'm not on blue team. I'm in gray. And you look at those other teams like the end zones. Well, all that field in the middle, that's our spot. The gray zone, the extreme rationalist, which is what I would consider myself, an extreme rationalist when it comes to, well, what makes sense? Why is this all being done? And I think that's it. Separating people inside of their groups, and like the great abortion issue, that what does that do? That just separates men and women from each other.
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's too, and if you look at both sides of really anything, particularly the political parties, it's the same people that are controlling both
Yeah.
sides up top. Whether it's the different board members in the corporations or in the different departments, like it's all connected. There's a revolving door with all of these people, and it's maintaining that power up there. But it's like almost, and I apologize, my dog's
No,
pretty
that's
bark,
fine.
but like it's disheartening sometimes to me because you start looking into this shit and it's like, one, everything that I thought I knew was a total lie. Like literally everything. I feel like I learned something every single day. But I think that's for me particularly, and you hit on this earlier, it's really the case for me because I was by definition ingrained in that system that you talked about where they want to be the ones to educate us. They want us, so I was educated, like I went that path that the American dream was telling you was the best way to go. So
Right.
everybody, like, yay, you did this, you did this. I went to a big university, to, law school, and I was just indoctrinated, like, and not even like by certain things. And I'm guaranteed, there's goals depending on where you're at in the country because it's all political too. But like, it's so crazy. And the point is like, it would be disheartening to me how in down and like disgusting and how everything is so screwed up. Like every system is so screwed up. But then you realize, and this is why I think like the whistleblower aspect of things is so important.
Yeah.
You realize that like a lot of this shit that seems so twisted at this point, whether it's like the amount of money that's being spent on wars and killing people, or the child like sex trafficking and all that awful stuff, or any other, like the horrible things that are going on to people who identify as something other than male and female. I'll just take that on both sides. Like you see all of that, but a lot of that, all it is like one person who's not necessarily a bad person. They very well may have been blackmailed into thing, may have felt like it was their only choice at that time, but all it took is one terrible decision and then shit can go south so quickly. And
Yeah.
I think of 9/11 a lot with that, and like the Dick Cheney stuff and how much, he controlled all of that. And all it really took was like a couple people being like, no, don't do the right thing because we can't do that because money, power, whatever. And then here we are. Like,
it's interesting you bring up 9/11 because I think 9/11 was in part some sort of a black magic ritual infused event.
I've
And
heard that. Yeah.
just to draw everybody's attention to, there's a great video on the internet. I'm not going to call it up on the show because it'll tank the show from the algorithm standpoint. We already said COVID. God forbid, we don't say things like anything that could be a substitute pseudonym for pasta bread gate.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I know, but this is a free
Like
country.
that.
Don't
Right.
worry. Don't worry.
Yeah. And Tony Podesta and his art collection, and James Elefante, and all these cast of characters that were involved in trafficking children, allegedly, as so it's been accused of them. It goes back to what I was saying right before you interjected, which was
Sorry.
the guest. No, it's fine. The guest on you're the guest, but the guest on Theo Vaughn's podcast, who exposed Pornhub as being owned by a company called MindGeek, which is owned now rebranded as ALO, which is the fifth most visited website in all of the internet. over 1 billion individual hits a year. Enough pornography, if you string it back to back to back to back, and this is information I got from listening to her interview today, that it would take you 185 years to watch it all the way through. Okay, a lot of terrible stuff, and essentially, it became a portal for human trafficking videos and revenge porn and other illegal underage illegal stuff, right? That has hurt so many women over the years that it's just criminal. And that is the kind of institutional big corporation. You can put big porn right up there with big pharma, with big jail, right?
With big tech, with big oil, with
big tech, big oil, all of it. And it goes back to, I think, energy and power and control over your hearts and mind. Prince once said, Prince, the artist, formerly known as Prince, the symbol, who changed his name a couple of times to get out of contracts that had terminology like for time in perpetuity throughout the universe. Just like Kanye went to the Ye to do the same thing. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Conrad changed his name to Ye to get out of contracts for the, because I wrote, actually, I didn't write, but I actually I signed a contract like that when I did a TV show. I think it was for 48 hours. And it said I signed a contract, and the language said your image can be used from time in perpetuity throughout the universe. It was the language and the thing. I'm like,
yeah,
what?
Yeah.
But
Dude, that's good to like. That's another thing. Big entertainment is another place people are getting royally fucked, because I've talked to quite a few filmmakers who are getting screwed over by those contracts like that. And again, it all trickles up to the same companies.
And right before this commercial break, I'm going to remind everybody what Prince once said, which is there's a battle going on for your hearts and minds, and the prize is your soul. And we'll be right back. And we are back. Paige is still with us. Paige wants to introduce the world to her new puppy.
This is Bluebeam. He goes by Blue for short.
So welcome to the world of Bluebeam. What a great name for a disclosure advocate, whistleblower, attorney's new puppy. Just like my dog's name is Dexter, as might some people might know why I called him that. And I think we are off to a great start in part two of the interview with the visit of Bluebeam. So just to tee you up here, Paige, we were talking offline before we started this segment about targeted individuals. Otherwise, I've been developing a theory, and it's been out there called designated culprit, where the United States government, through MK Ultra type targeted techniques, have used guys like Lee Harvey Oswald as the designated culprit for the assassination of John F. Kennedy, or guys like Sirhan was the designated culprit in the assassination of Bobby Kennedy. Even most recently, Matthew Thomas Crooks, the teenager incel who has been designated as the culprit in the first presidential assassination attempt since Ronald Reagan. So my question is it possible that these targeted individuals could be basically turned into a Manchurian kamikaze candidate to do somebody else's bidding? What information and research have you had as your time investigating the subject? And what do you think it's all? What road is it leading us down, Paige?
Well, pretty fucking wild one. I'll say that. Okay. But full disclaimer, I only recently got into the topic of MK Ultra. That was actually one of the topics, in addition to like the vaccine stuff, that I kind of had pushed away for a while, and in my mind of being like, I'm just not ready to find what I feel like I'm going to find, sort of situation.
Yeah.
But then after I kind of fell into the UFO stuff, it was obviously very connected. I was seeing a lot of overlap with it. And then because of my involvement with a couple spaces, I had a couple targeted individuals reach out to me, which at the time I had not even heard of the term, like that. I believe my understanding is that that's a term that the community itself has kind of given it.
Okay.
And I will say that, of course, already,
community of targeted people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us what you mean by targeted individuals. What do you mean by that?
So a lot of the people that I've talked with directly, a lot overlap with whistleblowers. I will say that. But basically, and this sounded absolutely insane to me, but they are being targeted by technology from afar. So Havana syndrome has been brought up a lot, with having like similarities or overlap. And I know Amy from Amy's Audios would be able to talk more on that because she's actually very involved in that stuff, I believe. But, I started listening in on a couple spaces. And at the time, like I said, I was more involved with the UFO community, but even that whole area of things was getting frustrating to me because we were running into like political bullshit again and just seemingly more stirred up drama intentionally / unintentionally within the community to divide people, and that was what led to working with these other people. And then I started seeing the overlap. And so a couple of them, in the first few that I talked to, particularly, that I've continued to work with pretty closely, they have been scanned. Their bodies have been scanned for like chips, basically. Okay. And they came to me with a story that said that they had been harassed for like their entire lives. Some of them involved in like sex trafficking and stuff and basically having handlers, but a lot of them not being, to their knowledge, but more like hearing voices in their head. Or one person I talked to literally went full catatonic. It was like they had told him, it was an online harasser had told this person that they were capable of this stuff and basically said, here, I'll show you, and made him completely catatonic. And so I was like, so were you aware of like what was going on? And he said, yeah, completely. His mind was fully there. He knew what was going on when they were pinching him at a lot of points, because that's apparently like one of the tests that they do when people are catatonic, whatever. But he could feel the pain of it, but he just was not able to move. And that was basically their way of saying, like, we can do this to you.
That's like sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting that technology is, or the effect of that technology is the same as what people say they feel when they come face to face with, say, a gray alien. They get a sense of sleep paralysis, that they're so shocked. Maybe it's not ontological shock that these aliens are using because they're vibrating so high, but rather they're using some kind of a psionic ability to trap you into this comatose or paralyzed state, like a sleep paralysis type state. And isn't it odd that the technology our government has is starting to overlap and maybe even become indistinguishable from anomalous phenomenon effects? And is that an accident?
No, actually, one of the things I started saying to people, because when I saw this overlap of people, and I saw particularly the targeted individuals community was being like really shit on, because again, their stories are some of like the things that you hear that happens to these people is horrific and damn near unbelievable. But
Amy,
not a lot of them don't.
Amy and you, and she
exactly.
That woman literally was being filmed moving her head and doing different things with her body. What's to say that you can't use it?
You can hear the people. I reminder, she has the ability to hear the audio that matches up with the person's movements.
Right.
And there's literally like 6, 7, 8 people. And it's like they're playing a fucking video game. It's like move head left, move head right. And it's all in there because she's able to look into the different frequencies of this technology, and so like obviously you like dogs can hear a higher frequency than humans can. It's the same idea with this tech, and her working on it to simplify it, I think. And so she can hear that. And it's like they're playing a game with these people's lives. But that being said, like, because a lot of them don't necessarily fall under whistleblower, because how do you whistleblow on something like this if no one even listens or believes that it's happening to you?
Right.
I saw that overlap, and that in turn made me be like, oh, I have quite a few connections in the UFO world. It sounds like it's very much connected because, like you said, that the sleep paralysis, that's a really good point. I wrote that down because it's the same as alien contact. Well, we are notorious for stealing alien tech. That's all over UFO Twitter right now. So the fact that we're able to also queue up with their technology to do things like the MK Ultra or, mind control, whatever, would make a lot of sense. And it would also, a lot of it tracks with like, Mike Herrera's experience and what he was told about like the red and the black, the different teams and what they're doing to people there with their mind, essentially. So yeah, like it's all connected. There's definitely a huge overlap. And my point, what I was getting at, is that I think that why the government, just like with anything else that they seem to do, when there's an issue, they'll come out on a public level and admit to things. So right now, it's like our government is coming out and having congressional hearings on things like UFOs, and the different whistleblowers in the UFO community. And that's how like Attorney Danny Sheehan's involved and like Lou Elizondo and stuff. But I think that's what's deeper and what the reason that they're okay with it being at that level with like, oh yeah, we just stole their flying technology shit. Then nobody's going to look at, oh, but how else is that technology being used?
Right. Yeah. And I feel like it's insidious in that, you look at the types of characters that are involved. Like, for example, Lou Elizondo. I'm not going to bash him individually. However, do you know that he kind of bragged that he was involved at Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay, during the time that we had all of those prisoners there from Afghanistan, alleged members of Al Qaeda. Some of them, obviously, we know weren't. Some of them might have been. But we know that Guantanamo Bay became famous through Julian Assange as being the home of torture, by our U.S. military of combatant prisoners. And Lou Elizondo's nickname, as his time as a intelligence officer, apparently interviewing people, prisoners, his nickname was Darth Vader of Gitmo. That doesn't seem, he's proud of that. So these are the kind of people that are now coming
in his mind. Like that is ingrained. I mean, if that's somebody, and I'm not defending him either, and I'm not trying to say anything bad about him either, because I think everybody involved is always doing what they think is best at any given moment. I truly believe that. But at the same time, like, it's been ingrained. If he's been in the military or government for that long, like, think of the mindset that is ingrained in you and is taught to you right from the beginning. And so I can so easily see how, from his perspective, he's justifying it, even though it's horrific. To not only do it, but to be proud of doing that.
To brag about it. And those were direct orders from the Darth Vader of politics himself, Dick Cheney, also rumored to be at the top of the UFO secrecy file as part of the United States government apparatus. And then if you noticed recently, this past election, Liz Cheney, Dick Cheney's daughter, failed senator, one term out of wherever she was at, came out in support of Kamala Harris for president of the United States. And I thought that was a hugely telling move by what I call the public-facing version of the COG, continuation of government department, which doesn't really want Trump around because he's a disruptor.
Yes, exactly.
You love him or hate him, he's unpredictable because he serves one God, and that's himself. Whereas these other people, they seem to serve a more sinister God in common, and that is the God of control, or maybe it's the derivative of Aleister Crowley's God, the Beast, or Baphomet, or all these other kind of bizarre anti-Christian characters straight out of the Old Testament, straight out of Babylon, that seem to be controlling Hollywood, music, politics, and even sports.
Oh yeah, definitely sports. That's and she will have to talk more on this, but like Amy, because she intercepts a lot of the like different frequencies, the radio channels that are being talked on, that are not accessible to like the general public.
Right.
She said that she's heard Trump numerous times on the recordings coming up. Particularly
as a targeted individual,
no, as like basically communications about like understanding what's going on in the state and stuff.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, my understanding is she is a Trump supporter. So like she will have a lot more knowledge on that and everything, but like she's heard it in the work that she does, that he's like on this different, level or whatever communication, having these conversations. And I think you're exactly right. Like he's, I don't want to call anybody a bad person, but he's not, I'm not a fan of him, but at the same time, I understand now why some people, or a lot of people, voted for him, because of, if you're able to see what's going on in this deep state, which the Democratic side of things is intentionally trying to prevent people from hearing, anybody who even remotely talks about that shit, whether it's like Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman, like all of those, Tucker Carlson, the entire left is like, oh, they're terrible people. Don't even listen to anything they say,
Right.
They
and try to make Joe Rogan out as a racist. They try to make Tucker Carlson out as a drug addict. They try to make all these people into these things that they clearly are not, to ruin their character. And matter of fact, if you look at what happened even today, I saw in the news that the CIA has been told that they're being downsized. So the CIA just offered 6,000 early retirement benefits to their employees, and most of them are taking it. This could be, God willing, the end of the CIA, which is an extra constitutional agency anyway. I say let's get rid of the CIA. Next, get rid of the IRS. And then we can get rid of Homeland Security and the Department of Education, so we can get back to being the free, rugged, individual people that this country was supposed to be, built on individual talent, opportunity, bootstrapping, and really just a true diversity of thought. And the only way you get diversity of citizenry is if everybody literally has the same opportunity to invent what it is they want to do as they grow up, and not be pigeonholed into this career or that, which is 5 options of 5 major corporations that you get to work for until you die, and then they don't care about you anyway. And so
they never care.
Yeah,
they never care. They're your worker bees.
Right. The Rockefeller School for Consensus Building and Average Learning, which will get you a great job at a major corporation, but won't help you in a real world where you have to use extreme rationalism to see the truth.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's so, they're good at what they do.
Yeah.
I will say that I think that we need to get rid of the IRS first, because if we stop fucking funding them, all of these shithole programs with our tax dollars, then they wouldn't have the money to begin with, I cannot imagine, and a country where we don't have a CIA, that's an amazing thought. But I feel like even before the CIA, there was another organization, and everything that this country is built on. I don't know. We could talk on that. I feel like that it started off pretty rough.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously our country's original sin is slavery. And well, I think our country's original sin is genocide and then slavery.
Yeah,
but
that's what
every major
America does.
country, and if you look at what's going on in the world today, there's genocide and slavery still going on. If you look at the Congo, genocide and slavery in the Congo, these people are being worked to the bone from the time they can walk to just to get into a hole to get cobalt so that we can have cell phone batteries, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like the entitlement, like that, like I feel like that's what it comes down to. Is like you've got, and I mean, from like Alice Crowley starting off, like the entitlement that you have to feel to be like, I am such a better, bigger person than this person for whatever reason you justify it for, whether it's race, age, gender, like, anything. Like you have to be giving yourself a reason to justify those actions. And it all comes down to entitlement or thinking that you have a better place on this earth or a more important place on this earth than any other human who is 99.9% exactly the same as you are.
Right. I mean, to the aliens, we are all the same kind of monkey, except some monkeys wear better clothes and live in better houses, right? But if we are if they are a threat, and I don't think that I think that's a mixed bag. I think that there are some certainly that maybe have made deals with the United States government to exchange technology for control. I think that probably happened under Eisenhower and Truman.
There's documentation on it. For sure. Like it's one of those things that, absolutely.
But I think there are positive ETs out there, positive visitors out there that maybe want to help us ascend. And then I think there are the majority of them out there are kind of in the middle, which are just they're kind of observing, right? Let's just see what happens. We don't want to intervene, but we're going to look and we're going to keep an eye on it. And I think those are the watchers. Those are the people that are maybe those are the orbs,
Yeah. And I agree with you. I don't think any of it is scary. I think that the only thing that's scary is how our government is potentially handling it and what we as humans are capable of. But like so many of the stories that I've heard about the different encounters are, it like Jason Sands, for example.
Yeah.
I just listened to his Joe Rogan episode. And Jason, by the way, Jason is one of my favorite people of all time. And that's another person who is getting shit on in the media or on UFO Twitter and on, online left and right. For whatever reason, it goes like this, just like they all do, but like he explained his contact with the EB and it was like you could feel, it's like a genuine like feeling what they're feeling. And a lot of people say that it's like, an overwhelming calm or like not anything to be scared of, even if you can't talk, even if you're like, how the hell am I hearing what they're saying and they're not talking? It's not a fear. And I think that I am convinced that the only reason a fear narrative is out there is because that's again another way for a government to control a large population. You make them fear an unknown. Oh shit, like we're not doing enough to make humans fight each other. Well, let's send down a scarier threat, i.e. blue beam, like that's, and I think that's what the fear narrative is. And that's why it's the only thing you're seeing on media or in television or anything our government's paying attention to right now, because that's all that they want out there.
Well, I think also you're right that they're constantly probing the American people for throwing out air balloons or Chinese spy balloons or drones to test how much, one, the American people are going to deal with, and two, what is going to incite us to a fever where we're begging them to protect us, and we're voluntarily giving up our rights, like we did after
our
9/11,
guns.
to say, "Oh no, spy on us. It's fine. Make us get felt up at the airport. It's fine. We need TSA, Homeland Security. It's fine. Let's torture people. It's fine. We beg you, torture me. Keep me safe." Right? They're what do they? Because they have rules, right? In esoteric, the occultism and all that, they have a rule. They're kind of like vampires. They need to be asked, invited to the house. They need it. And so they want American people to beg them to do it. Take away my rights. But they give you the problem, right? The problem is 9/11. The problem is mystery drones in New Jersey.
COVID.
The problem is COVID. And then we beg them, give us a solution. Well, they gave you the problem. They're going to give they wait for us to have a reaction. And then we give the solution. They give us the solution. They create the problem to get our reaction so that we beg them to give us a solution. And that's what they're doing over and over and over again. Yeah.
Well, and then we slowly find out that everything they told us was a fucking lie, but our memories are so short that we forgot the last time that it happened. And so this time we're going to trust them. I mean, I was right there with it, and the fearing thing and the, the anti-vax thing. And so, it's crazy how much you can be ingrained in a system and like be convinced that you're right.
Right.
But again, I mean, I think it all comes down to making us fight each other, because if we're so distracted fighting each other and shitting on each other, then we don't have the time or the energy to look up top and see who's actually, pulling little puppet strings.
I know, right? So to prevent us from eating the ultra rich control group, they need to keep the 99 separate, because if the 99 ever comes after the one has got nowhere to go except underground, like the rats and predators and parasites that they are. Now, listen, the UFO phenomenon has done one thing to me as I've been investigating it and become familiar with it, and that's brought me closer to Jesus Christ. In that,
same actually,
that is where I've been. I kind of was raised with that. I went away from it, became an atheist for a long time, and then this UFO phenomenon brought me back to Jesus, and I still struggle with my faith in times, but I feel like having a personal kind of attraction to the friend I could have in Jesus and the example that he sets for me, and look at the UFO phenomenon from that perspective. First of all, that gives me no fear, but fear itself, to quote some people.
Exactly.
And if you look at the positive aliens, they are all about Christ consciousness, all for the one. We are all one. We're all part of the bigger cosmic neighborhood, and we are all kind of different expressions of the Godhead in different manifestations, because God wants to experience all realms of human reality. And we're the only creatures we are created in the image of God. And so when I look at other animals and stuff, or other monsters that we see in some of these things don't look like they're created. They look like maybe they're manufactured, or whatever, bred or something, but not created. So I think that we can be deceived and we can be tricked, but I think as long as we come back to the basic principle of what is in the spirit of love and what is in the spirit of, the true human condition, I don't think is war.
Just be a good human. No, absolutely not. We're here for the experience, whatever. Like, I have so much to say to that, but we're here for the experience. Our soul is here in this vessel, which is here for the experience. So is the experience we really want working our asses off so that we can afford all of this materialistic bullshit that doesn't actually matter, and then like not be connected to fellow humans, to nature, to things, that we are naturally drawn to. And it's crazy, because then all of that stuff directly links to things like you said, how they're doing mind control. But then on top of that, you look at our population and like what Casey and Callie Means are preaching about. The Casey Means is the doctor from like Stanford medical.
Yeah.
That is all, she was like with RFK and all that stuff, but she's talking about like the chronic illness crisis. And it's like everybody's on fucking prescription drugs, everybody. And you're going to so many doctors, and it's like, and you're also taught like, and I, again, thought this way for a long time, to think that holistic practicing is bullshit. But it's like, well, if you take a step back and think about it, why are they pushing so many foreign substances, whether it's alcohol, prescription drugs, shit like the opioid crisis, CIA, like why are they pushing this stuff on us and making us basically zombies?
Yeah.
Like one of the things that I learned from the Casey and Callie Means interview was that like Adderall, which I think 40% of the population or something is on now, it's something that I was prescribed. A lot of my friends throughout law school, a lot of people that I talk to still are.
Yeah.
It was created for the Nazi soldiers during World War II to keep them awake longer and more alert. And then they stopped giving it to the Nazi soldiers because they started having psychosis. That's Adderall, stronger. Our current Adderall is stronger than the shit that they gave them back in World War II.
Really? I thought they were giving them methamphetamine back then.
Well, that is what Adderall is. It's methamphetamine. It's really? Like it's a version. It's like I'm pretty sure it's basically like, it's a speed that's like in like a time capsule type thing. So you get it slower. But again, like apparently it's a more intense version than what was causing these Nazi soldiers to have psychosis.
You know that the Blitzkrieg was fueled by drugs. Hitler was fueled by drugs, which gives people the illusion of grandeur, and really it
for
just
a little bit
off for a little bit. Yeah, well, that's why it always fades out, and those people never last long in the big picture because they burn out too quick, right?
Well, yeah. And I mean, but it also makes us that much easier to control, that much of a zombie, that much more dependent on a system that is completely broken. Like it is when we're pumped up with outside sources, shitty food that we're consuming that's not natural, and all of these drugs and stuff. It's like, oh, it's so much easier to control us as an entire population. And it's just happening more and more and more. Which
I disagree. I mean, that was one thing that attracted me to RFK Jr. was, get the yellow dye number 8 out of our food and all that stuff. I think that's a great start, But I think, there's a reason why, and to get back into MK Ultra.
Oh yeah.
Reason why
it's all connected.
Charles Manson, I believe, was targeted as an MK Ultra agent, and that was to discredit the hippie movement. Because the hippie movement really was about drop out of society, drop out of the economy. Let's, listen to music and be loving and peaceful. And they needed to disrupt that message and give it helter skelter, which was the MK Ultra version of hippiedom that ruined the peace movement of the 1960s and ended what was anti-war, anti-institutional, when it turned out that, and ended it into assassination, drug addiction, and ultimately, ipso facto, you've got musicians now singing about wet ass pussy and being the devil in your local pop store at every single turn is just pornographic lyrics, crazy, beautiful people that go through humiliation rituals and degrade their human spirit for, whatever $30 million contract they sign with Hollywood or the devil himself. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree. We should get back to the MK Ultra thing, but also I think we should do like a part 3 after this break because we still have so much to talk about. Okay. Yeah. But like even all of that, you're so right with the hippie movement. And I've talked about this in other contexts with like essentially hippies totally had it right.
Yeah.
But then you see a controlling, group of like the government sees this happening, and then they have to shut it down. That's like you see that across time. You see it in religions. You see it, and I'm not saying that cults are like a good thing, but most cults started off with a decent, good intention.
Yeah.
And same with like witches and like the Salem witch trials. Like it all comes back to it's a group of people who discovered that humans are in fact capable of like what you would say magic.
Yeah.
And as soon as they found out these secrets, then the government's like, well, fuck, that's for us. That's for, purposes of war and having more control over other countries and everything else. We can't let this secret out, essentially. And it's like all of these groups across times. It's the same.
We said, hey, this is a great idea. Let's see if we can use MK Ultra, not on our enemies, but on our own people. And has MK Ultra morphed from an individual person to attack to a mass hypnosis on society itself?
Yeah, I think that is part of it. It's like a slower burn situation, but I think that it's being used on the mass scale. Or, I don't know what you would consider mass considering the population of
let's
the world,
say the
but like
halftime show
very.
or the Olympics.
Oh,
yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. You sent all those videos. Like, what is your take on that? Like, what that is? Are you saying that that's like the darker magic side of like you have to put the message out there?
Yeah.
They have to know about it in some sort of way before we can do it. Thing.
According to like the Theosophical societies, as were designed by Madame Blavatsky and these people in the turn of the century. They were teachers of these occult or secret rituals from the Invisible College, which basically taught these kind of witchcrafty type alchemy type acts that could move society into directions that it wanted to go. So, for example, the 2012 Olympics in London had the entire ceremony was kind of foreshadowing the COVID vaccine and the whole COVID era. We have openings ceremonies at CERN that were clearly meant to worship the Baphomet. We have the symbology that they use, I think.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I know that's a lot, and it makes sense, like you said, like the Olympics, if it does, like the biggest platforms you can think of, how can we get the most people to see this at one sort of time? Because like, well, when it came, like the things I've heard about the 9/11 stuff, have you seen like the dollar bills? There's like films out there that talk about if you fold dollar bills a certain way.
Oh, it shows the planes crashing into it?
Yeah.
So join me over at patreon.com/Crime Scene Time Machine just for the price of a cup of coffee. And now, part 3 with attorney Paige Fox. Paige, welcome to the final leg of the show. It's been a whirlwind conversation covering everything from NASA to the Super Bowl and other kind of assassination mind control victims. But before we get started here with the final stretch, why don't you talk to me a little bit about your legal research, the definition of what actually is a targeted individual, who they are, and the UFO overlap.
Yeah. Okay. So at one point, I think it was before the first break, we had gotten a little bit into like who they are, and how I started getting connected to them. But basically, what I'm learning, and Amy, from Amy's audio, had mentioned that there are certain amount of like people, but there's basically like a lot of individuals, 100% of which I've talked to at least have a direct connection to military.
Okay.
Whether they served themselves or their parent or grandparent did, it seems like there's a connection there. And I will say that one of the things that Amy mentioned was that built into our military's contracts is this small print that basically opens them up to being, studied, being like subjects of mind control shit of different studies. In fact, like Trump apparently mentioned it in one of his speeches, how they're going to prevent the military from being able to continue doing this stuff because people are unknowingly, like you brought up the contracts at one point, unknowingly signing these contracts over that, which basically my understanding of it is that it locks them in to 8 forever potentially, unless there is 8 years of peace. And so one of the things Amy brought up, which I found was interesting, was that that was one of the main reasons that they did not want Trump in office for a second consecutive term, because that was 4 years of peace, and another 4 years of peace would have essentially meant that there were a shit ton of veterans who were released from their contract that they are currently bound to. And like, yeah. And like and this is stuff that I learned from Amy. I mean, I don't know, I'm sure she can verify like what she was talking about, but like it all made sense because I was the one who brought up to her, like, have you seen a pattern in this? Because I've seen a lot of patterns in the people that are coming to me. And I brought up the military one, and she said, oh yeah. And it's basically like, a leg of the government / military that's doing this stuff. It's not necessarily a official ranking, like Mike Herrera had mentioned. When he came across that operation, they were in what seemed like uniforms, except they were all black and they had no tags or like identification for what the ranking is or anything.
Right.
So it's like clearly government but not government type thing going on, basically.
Well, that's deep state type stuff, right?
Exactly.
The secret control group. And isn't it interesting that most UFO experiencer or ET experiencers or people who have claimed to be abductees, famous guys like Whitley Strieber and others, have deep, close connections to the military as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's all part of an ongoing, like, basically we're like little testing rats. Not me particularly, but, and I also think that that's a main reason. And then I'm going to get back, I'll stay on point, back to like who these individuals are that are being targeted. But I honestly think that that's like a main reason why so much of the media and like society, I think, is intentionally like, we are like, built or told that you cannot question, like veterans are the best humans ever. You need to respect them and so on and so forth, even though they're not respected by our own government and our own military.
Right.
General population needs to respect them. And it's like, you can't ask questions then. Right. And so then they're getting there's this mindset that's going on. I don't know. It's just, but yeah, I mean, it's sad because I'm not blaming anybody who's in military or anybody who was a veteran, or government. A lot of these people are in these positions, not because they want to be there, but maybe they started at age 20, right out of college. They thought they were getting a great job, but they got a security clearance. All of a sudden they've got blackmail left and right. Well, think about your family. Well, if you lose your job, you lose your house. And a lot of these people are being financially strained, just like with the whistleblowers. And it's a similar, what I found so fascinating was because I didn't have any experience in like legal side of things when it came to this stuff. Right. But instantly when I started talking to these people, it was so familiar to me because they had such similar mindsets as so many of the domestic violence survivors I had worked with. And by that, I mean, they were being financially strained, isolated, gaslit left and right, blackmailed, in fear, constant fear of their life, or a fear of like, I'm stuck, like, where do I go? And that's actually one of the things that I've brought up quite a bit when I talk with individuals who are, being targeted, is like, because within that community, and again, all of them have direct connections to government and military. A lot of them have connections to the defense contractors. Right. But they're so angry, and rightfully so, like their whole lives have been destroyed, or spent in fear or being like spent in isolation with nobody believing you because your story's so outrageous. They're fucking pissed and they want justice. And their definition of justice is send everybody to jail. And it's like, I get it, but that's not helpful because the system is so broken and it runs so deep. And I refuse to believe that many people are intentionally being evil, like, because it's just they're not. And some of them are being targeted themselves. Yeah. And by that, I mean, like Amy has brought up to me cops, for example. You see a lot of the cop stories on the news. Like they can easily go in and like change, make a cop pull somebody over and then just make them get angry and do crazy shit for no reason. And that can happen at any point in time, and so like
and just to interject real quick, and this is something that I became aware of in the mid-90s, and that was the militarization of the United States police force. More than half of every police officer on active duty today has been in the military or has served in the military, and most of those people have seen some kind of action. So you're taking people with military training and you're putting them in a peace officer position. And when you train a killer, we train a young man to be a killer, which is what a Marine or an Army man is. They're trained killers. And then
with severe PTSD.
Yeah. And now you're going to say, go patrol the suburban neighborhood and you're expecting, people that don't look, like them, others, right? Normally people of color. It's easy to look at somebody who's black or Latino and just, but they're not like me, so we can abuse them. And as a police officer, I don't think that's a conscious thing that they do, but I think it's a derivative of being trained to dehumanize what you perceive to be an other as an other, that is subject to your wrath, right?
A threat. Yeah. I had never heard that, but that makes a lot of sense because again, when we go through the phases of like, you're hearing about a lot of these unprovoked or, like not justified shootings.
That's what I specialize in about shooting cases. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's all about, these people's defenses. Like it was their reaction. They got scared. How were they supposed to know what the other person was going to do? Well, then you tack on one, like you said, they're trained to shoot and kill.
Right.
At least that one part in their life. And then two, the PTSD that comes with serving in the military, whether it's because of the treatment that you are being treated by fellow, higher ups, or the people that you're seeing dying, the people that you have to kill yourselves. Like,
well, the disassociation of your behavior from your responsibility to the behavior, I think causes a mental fracture. Right. Yeah. So let's say you go into the military, you're 18 years old, you go to war, you're trained, you have to be responsible directly or indirectly to killing somebody. Mm-hmm. How do you you're not the same person after that. Absolutely. There's no treatment you can receive that'll make you like you were before you committed a murder.
Yeah. Well, I will say, quick plug, that there's plenty of studies out there that shows that things like meditation, is more beneficial and more effective for PTSD symptoms as well as migraines.
Okay.
So that's something for people to keep in mind because, again, like the VA system is another failing system. And these people, even though they go into this thinking that they're doing this for the protection of our country, for the protection of, people, you're going in it because you think you're doing the right thing. And then you go in and you have to deal with this awful shit. And then you're just tossed out and left basically on the street. I mean, an insane proportion of homeless individuals are veterans.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's this awful situation, but it's the same idea with the people who are doing the targeting, I think, in the targeted individuals community, is a lot of them are directly in government programs, and they may or may not know exactly what they're working on, but they're still having to justify doing awful shit to awful people. And like I tell all the survivors that I work with, like, they have to live with that. That's their karma. And that's why you see so many unhappy, miserable, suicidal people in these positions. Like, that in itself should show you that they're not wanting to do this. Whether or not that's a conscious thing, no human wants to just murder anything, unless, like, and if you are, it's taking a toll on them. And so one of the ways, like, going back to the targeted individuals thing, so basically, I want to go from very beginning when I talked about what is happening. So the people that I was talking with, I learned that they have actual chips in their bodies.
Okay.
At least some of them.
Yeah.
And there's a doctor out there who has been able to scan them, and you can find scanners. And so one of the individuals that I've worked with, who was pretty public about it, and she would love to tell her story. Like, she's one of the ones I want you to meet with, collect her evidence, basically. But like, she had like 7 or 8 or even more chips in her, and you can trace the frequency. So like a radio frequency, essentially, that's giving the chip is giving off. I think I'm, it's correctly. And it traces back to a location. And so the chips that they found in her body in certain places, and she can remember certain procedures that she had throughout her life. So she's been targeted for her whole life. And one of them traces back to Lockheed Martin. One of them traces back to NASA. One of them traces back to Disney World. And there's a couple of other companies. Like,
wow.
What, like, you know what I mean? Like, how, that's insane. And so, like, in these chips are, and you can really, I mean, based on what my understanding of what Amy talks about, you can use any sort of technology. Like, you can use like a video camera. Yeah. It doesn't need to have Wi-Fi connection or anything to use some of this technology to target people. But these chips are a direct connection to these individuals. And so another one of the targeted individuals I had met with was working for a company and discovered that they were obtaining like way more data than they were releasing that they were collecting, or that they were acknowledging that they were collecting. And at some point it came to this person's understanding that they were recalling vehicles and then putting these same types of chips in the vehicle. And so, like, I mean, if they wanted to give somebody, and this sounds fucking crazy, I know, but if they wanted to do something like target them to give them cancer, they can do it through your car, just like they can do through your Wi-Fi on your phone. If they wanted to literally make you have a heart attack, they could do that. And that's the sort of shit that, like, we're dealing with, which is disheartening, I will say. But I will say that I see a better outcome for all of this than it may seem, like, with the gloom of that. But yeah, and so that's the sort of things that are happening. And so these people, and there is a shit ton of them. There's like this whole community that I'm learning about that are just kind of like trying to come together because nobody else is listening to them, and support each other. And you're seeing a lot of overlap in their stories. But I bet basically the UK, maybe, our military and the UK and a couple, NASA, Amy again can talk to all of it, but like 70% of the total targeted population is coming from like this one program, it seems like. And so it's probably almost certainly the fact that MK Ultra did not ever cease to exist.
Right.
It's one of those things that the government said, oh yeah, we did that a while back. Like, we're sorry, forget we could even do that, and let's move on. Like, that's what's happened. That's literally what it is. And so people are like, oh, but that ended back in the 70s. Really?
Allegedly. It's like Operation Mockingbird never really ended either.
No, I don't think any of them do. Yeah. Like, why end them if you're not forced to end them? And when you look at it from the perspective that it's being used in our military, it's well, we have to keep this shit quiet. We have to be at the top. We have to be testing it because otherwise another country is going to get it and they're going to be able to take us down. But it's like,
I don't know
you know,
about that.
there's
I don't know if I
good
agree
ways.
with that thinking. I don't like that thinking
I don't.
because if you, but whatever you create is what you beget from it. So, you know, if you invest billions of dollars into bombs and bullets and military spending, you're going to create a need. Ultimately, you're manifesting a need to use it.
Yep. I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
And it is manifesting. And I mean, and it's again, it's like I call it magic and people can laugh all you want, like, but it is. It's like essentially like we're capable of things that we don't realize that we're capable of. And the
Right.
reason that we don't realize it is because those capabilities are being twisted and used for national security and to kill people and to control people and to make things, you know, the way that a certain set of population decides that they know the right way and it needs to be. Um,
And
and so,
these
yeah,
people,
and these, what?
I was just say, and these people all seem to have the same socio-economic, political commonalities, and
Yeah,
that transcends Democrat and Republican, and really is about class.
yeah, absolutely. And it's so with the MK Ultra thing, that was one again, like not all of these people are strictly being, you know, targeted like through a similar program or whatever. I don't know. In 50 years, we'll find out the name of the program. I wanted to introduce it to the UFO community because again, I was like the fact that one of these targeted one of many people that I've talked with whose chip is directly connected to Lockheed and NASA. It
Right.
was like, huh, well, they've seemed to pop up quite a bit, you know, and all of a sudden, like, there's all of this congressional interest in UFO technology and alien technology that our government's using. Why aren't they talking about this shit?
Right.
You know, and so, like, my thought was, okay, this entire group of individuals who nobody's situation is better or worse, but like, when I first saw what was going on, it was like an entire community of people who is not getting any support whatsoever from anywhere. And I get it because again, if any of the people that I've talked with had come to me like a year prior, even
Yeah.
after I was into the UFO stuff, I I would have probably written them off as fucking crazy
Right.
because the things that they talked about were just outrageous. But then the first time somebody brought up the fact that like, oh, but there's statutes out there that like talk about the fact that employers are not allowed to chip them. And sure enough, I go and look into it and I think I found 33 different state statutes that specifically say employers are not allowed to chip their employees.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so it's like, yeah. And so like
Which
that's
means it had to be big enough problem that you needed to pass a law to prevent shipping.
exactly. But yet, on a general level, and me included, you know, try going to any attorney that is practicing any area of law and tell them, hey, I'm being chipped and I'm being threatened by getting voices in my head and, you know, becoming catatonic and uh, being trafficked. Like, there's all sorts of things that are going on, you know, like that's hard to find any legal representation for because there's just so many layers to that.
Right.
And on top of that, they're being financially strained intentionally. A lot of them are on some sort of like terrorist list or something that our government created. So they're being prevented from getting jobs.
Yeah.
Like they couldn't, you know, an Uber background check came back and then all of a sudden they weren't able to get a job. So it's like, and the same thing is happening in government positions because, like, for example, Jason Sands, and he's not necessarily a targeted individual. He is, but he falls more under the whistleblower category. And they stripped his clearance. So they are not telling him technically that he's doing anything wrong, but yet they stripped him of his clearance. All he's ever done his entire life is work in these positions in the government.
Yeah.
Now he's like, you know, in his 50s and like now you want him to switch jobs? No, they're keeping him dangling because they want to prevent him from being able to have any income.
Now, does he still work for the government technically? Is he still a member of the government?
I don't know for sure. I think He's a defense contractor. I could ask him.
Oh, okay.
Um, he was just in James Fox's film, which I haven't watched. But he did talk specifically about what he's doing, I think, in the Rogan episode that he did. Um,
Yeah.
but
Kind of
it's just like
amazing.
you see similar things happening. It's just
Yeah.
in different capacities. The tech companies, which aren't getting talked about nearly enough, and that's actually something that someone brought up to me super early on in my whole like UFO adventure that I've been going on, was how bad the tech companies are. And they were right. I mean, nobody's really talking about the tech companies, but the tech companies are the ones that have this shit, have the intelligent people behind it who
Yeah.
are not necessarily even knowing what they're being a part of. It's it's crazy.
Are they
Um,
overutilizing AI to get by ethical standards of spying by just programming the AI to figure out the data points, and that way, honestly, I feel scared of AI in that it's being utilized not to help, but to create a buffer between the corporate oligarchs and the users of the technology, where you're now
oh,
going to have to get used to not talking to a person and appealing to the humanity, but talking to an AI chatbot to solve your problems,
mhm.
and to give you assistance. And we all know, if you've had any experience with ChatGPT or those other AI, chatbots out there, which is different than algorithms, although they have the same rules in that
Mhm.
they give you the information that they're programmed with.
Oh, absolutely. They have a narrative. A lot of them have a narrative, and you're totally right. But I mean, I get the concern about the AI, but I just think that like it's all it's all there as tools for all of
Yeah,
us, as humans, as beings, and it's our choice to use it the right way.
yeah,
But I think that that just takes a lot more people not only wanting to do the right thing. Because I do think there's a lot of people, in these black programs, in these working at the underground bases and like in part of these shitty MK Ultra things going on, like there are people who want out. But again, if you've spent your whole life doing this job, you have a wife and kids
yeah,
and people that you have to support, bills you have to pay, and the government saying like, oh sure, you can come forward about it, you can quit, but also you're not going to get your pension.
yeah. Gonna run you
What
through the
choice does
mud.
that leave them in a materialistic world where money is everything? It doesn't leave them much of a choice.
Well,
And
I mean,
so
that's
like,
the sad state that we live in. We live in a material world, and like Madonna said, you just have to be a material girl, right? But if you
not
don't
working
live,
for any of us.
yeah, and it's not
It's
working,
not.
right? Like, because the older I get, I'm going to be double nickels this year, and grandfather times two, right?
Oh
And
yeah, congrats.
thank you. I'm actually have a play date with my grandson tomorrow. He just
Aw,
started crawling, and I aim to be there on his first step of walking. So I'm really
that's
excited
awesome.
about it. My little boy Dietrich. We call him Dietz.
Oh, I love
Uh,
that name.
yeah, he's beautiful. So, but the point I
Good.
guess I'm trying to make is like, uh, it's almost suffocating the
Hmm.
level of influence that the individual person has uh, over them by corporate entities and governmental agencies. And what is your advice to regular everyday people who are trying to navigate, um, ultimately being free, aside from meditating and so forth? But what's your message? What are you looking at into the future, as to how ultimately we get out of this bucket of syrup?
Hmm. Yeah, no, I wrote down a couple different things, and I think there's a lot of it, but I think the first thing is that we just need a societal shift in attitude, or like the an awakening. People, again, that's another term that's being like weaponized,
Oh wow,
but
yeah,
people need to wake up to it, and I'm a perfect example of somebody who just very recently has been woken up to some of the things going on. And the way that I think that we can do that is, one, taking back control of the narrative, like things like your podcast, things like these different podcasts who are having these people come on the show and be able to talk about it in a safe space, I think is huge, because so many of these people have felt so alone for so long that some of them, I've heard countless people tell me just thank you over and over and over again, just because I'm willing to like schedule a Zoom call with them and just listen to their story and not tell them that they're fucking crazy, and what I've been trying to do since then, what I initially started trying to do and what I'm still trying to do is then help people that I talk with connect to attorneys in the relevant place, because everybody hears like, oh, she's an attorney, and then they ask me all these questions, or okay, can I help you with this? You don't want me to help you with that. First of all, I'm not licensed in that state. I've never practiced that area of law. Right. It's not a good idea for either of us, right. But they don't know where to go. And the fact that like I'm an attorney who has a legal background, who like actually respected them,
right,
it goes so far. And so the awareness is one thing, the getting the facts out there. And then along with that, like societal shift is like the idea that we can't keep using scapegoats to blame, because if we do one of these sweeps, like you brought up '08 earlier, where there's a shit ton of CEOs who just walked away with millions, and then only a couple of them, got slaps on the hand, and it's like, oh, the whole population forgot that it happened, and it's those same people who are now using student loans to do the same fucking thing in a different way. It's going to happen again in the military and government positions that we're talking about, because if they don't feel safe coming forward, if they feel like, well, if I come forward, I'm throwing away my family's life, essentially, because they themselves are looking at it like it's a death sentence. They're going to be fired. They may end up in prison. And if a lot of the people who I work with, again, like I said earlier, they just want to send everybody to prison. They're just pissed, which again, I get that they're pissed. And it's a hard thing to kind of talk about with people, because I'm not trying to say your anger's not justified and these people didn't do bad things. I'm saying, if you send them into a broken prison system that's also just a for-profit system, and they either get sliced or paid off or what, like, it's broken, it's not going to fix anything. What we need them to do is understand like and acknowledge the shit that they're doing, and have the ability to come forward and talk about it, because our power is going to be in numbers, because clearly the top people, the people running our media and everything else, are not talking about it. Right. So the only way we'll ever get the general population to hear about this shit is to be able to talk about it openly on a bunch of different platforms and flood it. And so I think awareness is one, and like evidence sort of thing, like where I don't, and I say this all the time, but I don't like the idea of these people thinking that the legal route is their way out of this. Yeah. Because, and I don't mean that to like be disheartening. It's just that I see the legal system how it is, and it's also broken. Yeah. It's going to take years. It's going to take money. It's going to take time that a lot of them don't have. So being able to find people to provide resources for these people is huge, whether it's financial, helping them find jobs, connecting them with different attorneys, that sort of thing. But that's like
how about getting the chips out of their body
so that's
they can't be manipulated, right? So we need doctors to do that, right?
I mean, but they can still be manipulated. Like there's in the Telepathy Tapes podcast, there's a story about Lucille Ball when she first, back in the day, like she got teeth work done. Yeah. And
the dentist is always
it picked up frequencies from radio. So she literally thought she was going crazy, because she would drive by certain places and she would hear voices in her head. Yeah. Come to find out, it was her goddamn teeth that was connecting to a local radio station, and she like the number one profession for suicide. And my first thought was,
wow, really?
yeah.
Wow.
And my first thought was how many people I've talked to who have directly had dental work. And that's when their problems start.
Oh
So there's something going
not
on.
My dentist.
No,
I love my
again,
dentist.
it's not individual dentists I'm blaming. I'm just saying that,
I know.
again, the suicide rate shows in itself that I do too. But yeah, and that's why, but like to wrap that up, beyond like the awareness, beyond the learning about shit that's actually going on, and providing places or people that, not only the people who are being targeted, but the people who are targeting them, who are also probably being targeted by this person. We need more of these people to come forward. And that means that we have to have a way for them to do it or feel safe doing it. And that's the problem we run into. And so, but between that and like, again, you should have Amy on because she can talk about this a lot. But one of the things she talked to me about was, like, I asked her, because in my head, I had been doing a lot of wellness research, and like, my significant other is in a master's program that's focused on consciousness. So they're all about like the meditation thing of sides of things. And I've been learning a lot more about it. And it seemed like having control of your mind, having the ability to meditate in itself was acting as like kind of a barrier and could decrease symptoms of the targeting. And Amy confirmed that in the individuals that she's worked with, which is hundreds, is that increased dopamine and serotonin seem to be able to decrease the targeting that's going on. And like dehydration is a common thing that she sees. So it's just things that are going on in our bodies that I think lines up with the benefits of things like meditation and, listen, sound science and somatics and stuff like that. And so using that stuff for these people who are being targeted, I think is very beneficial because it's free and it's accessible to them at any point in time. And that's why I push that. But other than that, like, we need all the help we can get from a legal perspective, from a, like a whistleblower perspective, evidence perspective. Because another thing, your side of things is that so much shit happens. Sorry about my dogs. So much shit happens to these people in such like over a long period of time that when they go to try to tell you their story, they're just all over the place. And so you combine a crazy story with somebody who sounds crazy right off the bat, you're not going to get people to listen. So like helping them organize the shit that they have, because a lot of them have evidence. It's just a matter of organizing it.
Well, so that's another and the difficult job that I have here in the 1 minute I have left on this epic interview with Paige Fox, my thoughts are as follows. In the world that is so crazy that if you aren't affected or disassociated and absolutely feeling crazy, maybe you're the one who's crazy. And we should take time to listen to the people that sound crazy, because maybe they're the ones that are seeing the true nature of the reality that we live in. And if you're okay, and maybe you're just too okay, you need to take a little bit of Paige's advice, meditate, eat good food, maybe learn how to fly in the trapeze, and combine that with a little bit of prayer, and love your neighbor, love yourself. And on behalf of Paige Fox, I've been Scott Roeder, and until next time, we'll see you around.
Cheers.
Thanks, Paige.
Yep.
We'll see you around.
All right. This was great. Thank you, Scott.